Are you nervous about your child starting school for the very first time? Are you wondering what the best way is to guide him or her through this first huge milestone? Well, stay tuned because help is just round the corner. Hello and welcome to Parent Talk. I'm Jane Farnham. Now, seeing your child off to school for the first time is a huge milestone in any parent's life, and whilst it's a very proud moment, for parents and children alike, it's often incredibly emotional and stressful. Joining me today to offer some helpful advice on how best to deal with separation anxiety is Dr. Hilary Jones and child psychologist Emma Kenny. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Jane.
Thanks for joining us. We're live today, so if you have any questions for Dr. Hilary or Emma, please use the box on your screen and we'll do our best to tackle them over the course of the next 15 minutes or so. And if you're tweeting whilst watching the show, then please use the hashtag StudioTalkTV and we'll try and give you a mention. Now, Dr. Hilary, my middle one is about to start school in a couple of weeks. It's quite stressful. But for a lot of parents, you know, it's realising for the first time that your babies aren't babies anymore. What can we do to cope?
Well, that's right. You know your baby isn't a baby anymore, but just as you look forward to them sitting up for the first time, taking their first steps, it's important that you encourage them to make the next step in their lives. And to enable them to grow and develop, that means going to school, socialising with other children, interacting with teachers and friends. And as part of your duty as a parent, it is to let go their hand that first day and not show them that you're anxious about it, but portray it in a positive way. This is a next adventure in your life, a fantastic challenge. You're going to have such fun because the moment you share your anxiety with them, they'll pick up on it. They'll get tense, they'll get anxious, and they won't enjoy their first day either. So it's all about positive messaging.
So make it really exciting. Now, separation anxiety, what exactly is it?
Well, I mean, separation anxiety is on two levels because both a mother and a child can feel it. And it is what it says it is. It's an anxiety that's elicited when you become separate from one another. If you just imagine the mother and the child's proximity, on the whole, even with busy lives, most mums have spent quite a large amount of time with their children. So you've got your routines, you have your consistency and the continuity, and obviously your child has formed habits around that consistency. Now, when it comes to starting the first day of school, it's going to change. They may have had indications of experiences at nursery, but for many children, this really is the first day that they will be leaving mum independently and for a long period of time. I guess the way to deal with separation anxiety, so for the mother who feels hyper anxious, possibly crying, going around to all their friends and talking about the fact that they don't imagine that they're going to be able to cope, it's all right to do that as long as what you don't do is transfer it. So there isn't a process of transference where the child is seeing it. Because children really do live the experiences that they see from the parents. They are role models as parents. So as a mum, it's important that whether you feel it or otherwise, you're smiling, and that means that your child is going to feel a lot more secure. The way to deal with separation anxiety is to firstly recognise you're overthinking, you're over-processing, and you're over-imagining this situation. You need to de-escalate those feelings by saying to yourself, I did it, my mum and dad have done it, all my friends have done it, and we've all survived it. And actually, those horrible things that you think are going to happen are 99.9% of the time ensured not to. So just reduce the anxiety.
So put it into perspective a little bit, because we had an email from Katie Hilly, who says, my daughter starts school soon and I'm extremely emotional all of the time. Is this normal?
I think for a portion of people, it's very, very normal. I'd say the average person accepts that this is just part and parcel of life and has some anxiety. But if you really are struggling, if you're really upset, incredibly tearful, don't feel like you're going to be able to go through it, seek some support. There are lots of people who've been through these feelings or can at least empathise with those feelings. And if it really does feel like you're out of control and you're literally going to leave the school gates collapse and be collected at 3:30 when you collect your child, it's time to go and seek a little bit of extra help. Go and have a chat with your GP.
Okay, so that's as far as a parent, from a parent's perspective. What about for the child? How can we help them? I mean, we're talking about making it exciting for them, weren't we? And bigging it up a little bit. But if they are quivering wrecks walking through the school gate, what can we do to just pep them up a little bit?
Well, in relation to that last answer, it may well be that mum is particularly anxious because she realises that this particular child is very clingy.
Yeah.
It may be that this particular child is closer to mum for whatever reason, and might struggle as opposed to an older child that's been to school and wouldn't have struggled so much. So the child may have particular issues, may be a little bit more clingy, in which case it's even more important for mum to realise that it's important that they take this next step, because they're clingy now, they'll always be clingy unless they make that separation and get on with life. And
so it's really important for them as well, the children.
Yeah, and just as children will catch up with other children who walk or crawl or talk before other children, children who are clingy will catch up with others once they are, given the challenge of going to school and enjoying it. And then it's about communication, and at the end of the day, and of course the child has to come back to you at the end of the day, remember, it's important to say, well, how was today, and who did you sit next to, and what did you see them doing, and how did they behave, and what did the teacher tell you? And keeping that communication open at all times.
They certainly feed off you, I know that, with my little ones. But how do we know it's not just a little bit of nerves and it is actually separation anxiety? In what ways does it manifest itself?
Well, separation anxiety is that saying bye-bye to mummy at school gates in an unfamiliar place, unfamiliar environment. Sometimes the child will toddle off thinking, hey, this is great, and it's mum who's left in floods of tears. It's sometimes worse for mum. Let's get that right. But that's what separation anxiety means, that people can be tearful, they can be upset, they can be anxious, they can feel that they lose their appetite, they might become sleepless at night. And for children particularly, they might regress a little bit. So they become more clingy, they become more demanding of mum or dad, and they might start to wet the bed again. So 1 in 5 5-year-olds will be wetting the bed. And some have been dry by night and start to do it again once they've started school, because it's a new challenge. And that can impinge on the way their bladder connects to their brain and the messages that the bladder sends to the brain. They can have dreams about school, sometimes anxious dreams, and that can cause the bladder to be less controlled. So there are ways around that. Certainly don't get angry with them. It's normal part of development. Explain that. Say, other children will be doing exactly the same. Don't worry, this will stop. It's usually quite temporary. And if it's not just temporary, then obviously see the doctor to exclude things like a bladder infection or diabetes. But dry nights, for example, to keep them dry at night, to get them perhaps doing some of the laundry so they understand that it's all normal process. All these things help, and there's medication if they're going to have sleepovers and they're a little bit older or going on school trips that will temporarily give them good bladder control during the night.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because bedwetting is one of the common symptoms of separation anxiety. So we spoke to Dr. Penny Dobson, one of the leading experts on bedwetting and founder and former director of ERIC, the UK charity for bedwetting, to find out a little bit more.
Bedwetting is a common problem, and it's common at the age group of, say, 4 or so, 4 or 5, when children are starting school, and there can be a problem for this for parents in this age group. For some children, of course, starting a new school can be a stressful event, and it can contribute to a bedwetting problem becoming a bit worse, or a bedwetting problem that was resolved suddenly starting again. So this can be very upsetting for the child and very dispiriting. And also, of course, parents feel very alone with this problem, because it isn't something that's discussed at the school gate very much. But we want to get across that it's not due to laziness or lack of willpower, and neither is it due to poor parenting or the parent doing something that they shouldn't be doing. It's just happens. And what we want to do is reassure the child and the parent that this is something that is likely to resolve itself. Sometimes it takes a bit of time for the bedwetting to stop. But there are a few things along the way that the parent can do. I think it's important for parents to be very matter-of-fact about the bedwetting, and not show that they're frustrated by the wet beds, to reassure the child that it's not their fault, that isn't something that they have any control over. And parents can support in a number of ways. One of them, for example, is to reward the child for steps along the way, such as going to the toilet before bedtime without prompting, drinking good levels of water fluid during the day, and also telling the parent when they're wet during the night. So you're rewarding things that the child does have some control over, rather than a dry night, which is not always possible to achieve immediately. And the other thing is to make sure the child isn't constipated, because this can sometimes contribute to the bedwetting.
Well, some sound tips and advice there. And we've also got another question in from Louise Peebles, who says, my little girl is going off to school for the first time. She's very nervous. Bedwetting has become a common problem at home. How can I'll help her? Emma, what can we add?
Well, first and foremost, it is normal that when a child goes through a transitionary period, their behaviour may change. School is a big deal. I'm interested to hear that she knows that she's going to school, because I think that suggests there's some anxiety in the household, and that might be translating to the child's behaviour. It's all about making sure that every single day of a child's life, when facing a new opportunity, is felt as an adventure. It's about ensuring that there is such a positive reference every time the idea of school is mentioned, that the child starts to identify a positive link. It's also about doing things like dummy runs to the school, going for the walk, creating ownership, letting them go out and buy things for the school so that they feel that they've created this ownership, the uniform, getting their own style, feeling that this is something that they have an intention or intending to do. Aside from that, a child wetting the bed in these circumstances, particularly at that age, is very common, and it's not regressing, it's just dealing with, so it's making a psychological journey a little bit more physical. Just reduce the anxiety, sheets can be washed, dry nights can be worn, and harmony will be restored when a child adapts to that environment.
That's good to hear. I'm actually taking my little one out to buy the shoes tomorrow, so hopefully that'll get
Brilliant
him a little
idea.
bit more excited. Now, I've got a couple more emails in. How can I help keep both my young ones calm before they start school? That's going to be an interesting one for me next week. That's from Sarah Woodward, and from Natalie Jenkins. It's sleepless nights. My son can't sleep at night because he's so nervous about starting school. Have you got any advice? So obviously it's not just bedwetting. There are other symptoms that comes with separation anxiety. Let's talk a little bit about those and how we can help.
Well, certainly any change for a child that they can see coming in the near future can be potentially stressful, and that can manifest in sleepwalking, in disturbed sleep, in lots of questions, and that apprehension, which can cause, can upset their eating patterns, can make them have tantrums to get a bit more attention and manipulate a bit more attention from mum and dad. All these things are within the normal remit of what goes on. That earlier question is interesting about two children going to school. Yeah. At least they've got each other. Yeah. They're sharing the same experience. It's not as if they're going on their own. The singleton, though, however, he's got to face it alone. And usually it is only the one day that is the problem. By the second day, they're actually looking forward to it. The teachers, fall over themselves to make it a pleasurable experience. It's playtime. They're going to meet new friends who are doing exciting things, and usually they're looking forward to the second or third day. Sometimes for some it takes a little bit longer, of course it does, but a lot depends on the personality of the child, and as we all know, all children are different.
I think that's an important point to remember, actually. They're not starting doing A-levels, they are actually playing the majority of the time.
It's not usually stressful at the age of 5.
What about having two children, if they're both off to school at the same time? Can you offer any extra advice to keep them both excited?
Well, realistically, like Dr. Hilary says, they've both got each other, so it's about making it a joint adventure. But also, I think it's important for parents to treat them as individuals and not just to jump them together, because even though they're both going to experience the same thing, they'll do it in different ways, independent of one another. So it's making sure that you set time aside every day to have communication with them, to make sure that you're asking about what the other one was doing, because children are obviously not necessarily that introspective that they can tell you all about their day, but they can tell you about what they saw and observed in other people's days. So do that with each other. And again, just make them own the journey. I think that separation anxiety is a really big term, and when you look at it, anybody should have a certain amount of separation anxiety. You're leaving someone that you love and who takes care of you. But when it's very, very extreme, and you will see incidences of this, and mums at home will have experiences where a child gets very, very distressed for long periods of time, that's very difficult for a mum to see and deal with. It's just at that point, take heart, because what we do see is at 13, at 10, at 8, that isn't happening. So even if you're the unfortunate recipient of a child who's hypersensitive to being separated, In the long term, it's very rare that that behaviour continues, and it's actually usually resolved within the first few weeks to the first few months. And it's just bear with it. Don't get guilty. It's a wasted emotion, and recognise that in the long term, this is all about your child's educational development and growth, and it will be okay.
Yeah, we do spend a lot of time feeling guilty as mums, that's for sure. But some really good advice there. But finally, all we've got time for is just a few tips to prepare yourself ready for school, for your kids starting school. I suppose yourself and the child, what are your top tips?
I think for me it's about presenting this new challenge as a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful adventure to open their minds, to get them to meet other children, exciting playtimes, new gadgets, new toys, new learning opportunities with books and toys and games, as I've said. So I think if it's presented in a positive way and telling them that it's only a short day and you'll be there at the school gates to welcome them at the end, makes it much less of a worry. And if you present a happy face with a big smile and you're excited about it, they're more likely to pick up on that.
Oh, that's really lovely. And Emma?
From my point of view, start the way you mean to go on. Get up in the morning with a smile on your face, make the journey to school an interesting and exciting one. Fake it until you make it. Make sure that no matter how anxious you are, you seem to be having a good time. Acknowledge that they're sad, but also reference that they are going to go because there are boundaries. Accept that it's only going to be a short day, and when they come out, make sure you have a lovely treat for them, and then get on with the rest of your life. School is a portion of a day, it's not the whole day, and you should approach it that way.
That's really good advice. Thank you so much for joining me, guys. That's really interesting. Many thanks to Emma and Dr. Hilary, but I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. If you want to find out more about separation anxiety and how to resolve issues such as bedwetting, then do go to drynights.co.uk. And in the meantime, thanks for watching and goodbye.